Belker, and welcome to Global Connection TV. Today we're going to be speaking with Cheryl Faye, who is the head of the Secretariat for the Girls' Education Initiative at the United Nations and here at UNICEF. Cheryl, thank you so much for joining us today. And this is a great opportunity to talk about a very important issue, and that is on educating young girls throughout the world. So what can you tell me about the Girls' Education Initiative?
The Girls' Education Initiative, Whitney, was established to help the world meet its objectives with regard to educating all children by the year 2015, and especially girls. What we know is that the discrimination against women around the world starts at a very early age. It starts in some instances even before birth, and it continues through childhood. And the United Nations and its partners have discovered that through educating girls, in fact, you're making the best investment in developing countries. Educating girls means that you influence child mortality, so that girls who grow up and become mothers, if they have an education, they have fewer children who die as a result.
Yeah, actually, I've heard the slogan quite frequently that you educate a girl in developing economies, you ultimately educate a family.
That's correct, because girls, in fact, take so much of what they've learned back to the household. They wind up helping the household adopt more healthy practices with regard to hygiene, with regard to nutrition. They also help their siblings with their studies, and in many countries, the girls, in fact, wind up helping their mothers as well, many of whom are illiterate. As you probably know, illiteracy amongst women is a tremendous problem throughout the developing world in particular. And so
yeah, I heard that there's now 150 million children within the school ages that are not currently enrolled in school, and that 62 million of these children are girls.
That's right. For every 100 boys that are not in school, and that's already a scandal, in fact, 115 girls are not in school, which makes it even more compelling to ensure that we have special programs to ensure that girls have a bit of a leg up in terms of education.
So here in the United States, I mean, many of our viewers are not very familiar with this issue. In the United States, it is required by law that your children go to school, correct?
Well, yes. Education is free and compulsory in the United States, and that is a tremendous asset. But there are problems in the United States, as in many countries as well, with regard to differences between how girls are educated and how boys are educated.
For example?
And we've discovered in some of our major cities, in fact, that we're having problems with boys going to school in the United States, which is another manifestation of the whole gender dimension in education.
I'm not exactly sure I understand what you mean by having problems with boys going to school.
Well, boys attending school, boys graduating from school, boys performing well. This is a problem in some urban areas of the United States. It's a problem in some parts of the Caribbean. It's a problem in some parts of the Pacific. But in most developing countries, the problem is girls not going to school. And because girls don't go to school, that means that they don't get an education, which means that when they grow up and they themselves have a possibility of contributing to the society, that they are absent. They're not there in order to be able to make a contribution. It also means that as they become mothers, that unfortunately they're not as knowledgeable. They don't
about reproductive rights, or
they don't seek prenatal care when they're pregnant. They don't. They have higher mortality rates amongst their children, and they wind up having children who themselves do not go to school as frequently. And so girls' education turns out to be, one of the best investments that a country can make.
Okay, so what are some of the specific initiatives that are being pursued in, for example, maybe you can tell me a little bit about your experience in Gambia.
I just came back from 4 years where I was the UNICEF representative in the Gambia, which is a small country in West Africa. And it's a country where the mothers' clubs, in fact, are key to girls' education. Gambia is a country where the overwhelming majority of women are illiterate, and about 2/3 of children only are managing even to enroll in school.
And why is that?
Well, it's because of poverty, it's because of cultural reasons, it's because of history.
When you say culture, is it because the family requires the children to stay home and cook and clean and
frequently families
firewood or whatever
expect that girls will take a greater role in domestic chores, that girls will be there to fetch water and to cook and clean and look after younger siblings. And so they also expect that boys, when they send their boys to school, that the boys will in fact wind up going out and earning an income and helping the families. And so frequently they will prefer to send boys to school than girls. They will also frequently take girls out of school earlier. By the time that a girl reaches the age of 11 or 12 years old, a family in some of these countries will feel that perhaps she's at greater risk of becoming pregnant, out of wedlock. And so girls as early as young as 12 and 13 years old are being married off, and obviously taken out of school first, and they go on to become very young mothers who don't have the knowledge and the skills in order to ensure that they and their children are fully protected.
So clearly there's a vicious cycle of girls not being educated or having to leave school at an early age, and then if they're not educated, having children, you know, at an early age that probably will go through the same cycle.
Absolutely.
So how do you break that cycle?
What you do is, first of all, you make schooling compulsory and free for all children.
At a governmental level.
Many countries have taken this bold step.
And is this part of the Millennium Development Goals initiative as well?
Yes, universal primary education is one of the Millennium Development Goals, and as is gender parity, particularly at the primary and secondary level of education, because that will in fact have a spillover effect for the entire society. It's not just about education.
So what percentage of the girls' education initiative is dealing on a political, governmental level to make education for girls mandatory versus working in other areas specific to keeping girls in school or getting them into school?
Well, certainly the UN Girls Education Initiative is a partnership. It's made up of about 20 UN bodies, the World Bank, international nonprofit organizations, and it attempts to address the issue at a policy level, to enter into a dialogue with governments and decision makers at a very senior level to make certain that they're making the right decisions for their children.
Okay, so are there any success stories that you can share with us, or any progress that you've seen in country that would resonate here at home?
Absolutely. There are globally about over 60 countries that have already achieved universal primary education, and there are many other countries that are trying very hard to achieve that. There are a number of countries that have achieved gender parity, which means the same numbers of girls and boys are attending school, and many others that are working to ensure that that happens.
So what are some of the countries that we should keep our eye on that still need a tremendous progress in the area of gender parity and keeping girls in school?
Well, certainly,
name a couple of the countries.
Certainly, the country where I just came from, the Gambia, is making tremendous strides, but an awful lot more needs to be done to ensure that all children have access to a quality education. There are a number of other countries in Africa. South Africa comes to mind. Countries in East Africa as well. Countries in South Asia, India. India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh have huge numbers of children, many of whom are in school, but many of whom who are not. And so it's critically important to ensure that all of those children do complete a quality primary education and that they're able to go on and lead productive adulthood.
So what kind of budget do you have to work with to promote these types of initiatives and to create the awareness of